so then it's doing that. So the beginning of the recording, this is Jess Pettit. We're going to start in probably about 5 minutes, let people be able to get in, and then we'll get started. So there you go. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Those of you that are already here, we're just going to wait a couple of minutes just to make sure that people have time to get in. I'm Jess Pettit. Nice to meet you. If you have access to your chat, my question this week is, what unusual thing do you like to eat for breakfast? Because I am bored by my breakfast routine, so I am accepting new ideas. Feel free to put it in the chat while we're waiting.
Strange things to eat for breakfast.
Like, they don't have to be strange. They're just not your typical things, because I'm familiar with most typical things.
Okay.
Some typical things I'm not familiar with, but there's a new TikTok person that I followed whose name I can't remember, but on Mondays all she does is eat people's weird snacks, and tries them all, and like 9 out of 10 are amazing. So I am more of a breakfast eater, so I'm doing this. And we'll wait like 3 more minutes. Tasha, that's what I usually have for dinner when I have something like that.
Yeah, I love just eggs and rice, so I eat them for a lot of different meals.
Mm-hmm. And Jess, I tried to make my own energy balls once. Tom Singer, who you may remember, actually has a good recipe, or Sarah, his wife, has a really good recipe for energy balls. And the problem is you can't deviate, because then they get too sticky or gooey, or they mold too quickly, because it makes a lot. But whatever that recipe was quite good if you follow directions, which I generally don't do.
I'm sure some more people will jump on, but I know that this is end of the year for a lot of people. So I know people are scrambling to hit year-end goals and taking time off. So give them a couple more minutes.
Sure.
I had to update my Zoom. I guess it was outdated. I needed to update a new version. Maybe someone else is going through that as well.
I think during COVID, I just got in the habit of every single morning, the first thing I do is check for updates on Zoom, so that it didn't like surprise me in the middle of the day. Beck, the Premier Protein Latte shakes. I'm just gonna throw this out there in case anyone is interested. It is coming into winter season. So even though I am a white woman, I do not like pumpkin spice things. However, last year, my local little cafe did an eggnog chai latte, which I was like, no, I'm not gonna like any of these combinations. And then I accidentally got the wrong drink from the bar. I stole someone's drink because I'm evil and awful and didn't notice till I was driving away. And then I didn't even like eggnog, but I am now completely addicted to eggnog chai. And so I have been stalking the bar waiting for when is it going to be chai eggnog time again. And very nicely, the person who worked at the cafe informed me I could buy eggnog and make my own eggnog chai. The audacity. But anyway, I've been doing that and it's delish, but it's too rich to have too much, which I didn't know was a possible thing for my palate. And yet here we are. So eggnog, chai concentrate, make it like normal. French kiss, not French kiss. What's that called? Chef's kiss. I mean, I guess depends what you're
You
into.
could French kiss, yeah.
Yeah.
I love eggnog. Eggnog is eggnog lattes, cookies, all of it. It's like why I gained 15 pounds over the holidays is eggnog.
Well, don't tell
It's
me
like
that
drinking cream. It's like amazing.
it's pretty dang good. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so it is 6 after. I'm gonna assume that that might be enough time. So
I think
I'm gonna share a handout into the chat just in case it is helpful for people. And then Tasha, if you don't mind, somewhere in the middle, in case more people are added in a different time, just adding it into chat again, that'd be great.
For sure.
I don't know if y'all have any announcements or anything you'd like to say, or you want me just to wham bam start.
No, I think you're good. We're really excited to have you. Thank you so much for doing this. Just as a little intro to us, so we're Aerotek, and I think we have some Aston Carter people on here as well. So we're an ERG employee relations or an employee resource group for the LGBTQ plus. We just launched allyship last week. So I think I saw a few allies jump on. So our ally population is really small right now, but it's been live for like, I don't know, 72 plus hours. So we're excited to have them on, and then identifying members. So just really excited to have you and just really thankful to have this opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I basically have 2 skill sets. So one is folding fitted sheets, which is obviously the most impressive of all of my skills. And the other one is telling jokes about diversity related things and hard topics, which is one of those is monetizable, but it's, different strokes, different folks. Here we are. So I'm super happy to be here. This is my last keynote for the year. Sniff, sniff, 2023 is almost over. And as y'all are like reaching your end of the quarter goals, I don't mean to make you panic. It is only mid-November. You still have more time. So you're good. I'm pretty much done. So welcome. What I shared in the chat is a handout that's a flow chart. It is also page 192 in my book, in case you are ever interested. What I thought I would do today is kind of work through that flow chart, but I have to first back up and explain where did the flow chart come from and what is it about. But I also gave a texting number in the chat, which I highly recommend y'all write down. If you're watching the recording, this makes this evergreen because you can also write this down. But what I find really fascinating about being a keynoter is that my job is to be thought-provoking, but end on time. But then if I'm thought-provoking and end on time, you don't have time to get to ask questions, or you feel pressure to ask questions before my time is up. And so what I'd rather you do, if I'm thought-provoking, is that you're going to think about me later. Shucks. And then you're going to have questions later, and now you have a way to ask me questions. So while I'm talking, you can text message, and if you're watching the recording or you're thinking about it later, because that's actually my job, is for you to be thinking about this later, I want you to be able to text message me when you have a question, not inside of this little time slot. So the texting number is area code 202-670-4262, 202-670-4262. And while those of you that are here live in the moment, if you text message me something, there is a possibility that I could use it or read it aloud while I'm in the group. Because I don't know power dynamics, just put DR at the beginning of your text, and I will not read it aloud if I end up doing that in this webinar, but I'll respond to you. What I think is fascinating is I get texts all day long, every day. So sometimes I might even get a text that's not even from someone in this group. They just happen to magically think about me while I'm doing a recorded keynote. That's also really good cover in case you're like, who texted you that? They might not even work here. So feel free again to text. The number is 202-670-4262. And Tasha, you're welcome to put that in the chat a couple of times too. Thumbs up takes a team or a village. So I have been doing diversity related work for just over 20 years. I have very good skin. And one of the things that I realized is that a lot of times people approach diversity related work from our subordinated or marginalized identities, and other people kind of expect that to happen. And so specifically as a queer person, for example, when I would do ally trainings and when I had jobs before I became self-employed, which is a coded way of saying getting fired so many times I had to become self-employed. But when I would do ally trainings, what I found was queer people would show up to my ally trainings either to like fact check my shit or to kind of meet each other and see who else is around. The straight folks that would show up to my ally trainings were really there to try to figure out how to not screw up anymore. And so it was kind of a balance between people meeting each other or cruising each other while also telling people like, you don't ever get to know all of the vocabulary, all of the wording, all of the information so that you never offend anyone. That's actually not the point of an ally training. The point is to recognize you already do, and you already have offended people, most of which you don't even know about. So we're building the skills of being less defensive, how to be a better listener, how to be able to understand like the intersection of different identities. So while I was doing that work, I began to realize that most of the people who were showing up to my ally trainings were also mostly white folks, mostly upper class folks, mostly highly educated folks. So while I had them in a captive audience, I then began to do more work around our dominant identities. So whenever I get to do a talk like this to an identity group, I first just want to acknowledge that there are probably people on this call who have to pick an identity to figure out which ERG webinar you're going to go to because they're all at Wednesday at 7:00. So you have to pick which one you're going to be this month. So I just want to acknowledge that that's weird. And thank you for picking this one this time. Hopefully they're all being recorded so you can pretend you're going to watch all those recordings. We're not. We say we're going to while we're on a treadmill. That's motivation enough not to do it. So here we are. So thank you for picking this. I appreciate it. But I do really think that there is something very empowering about doing work from our dominant places that really doesn't have a good marketing team. And what I mean by that is doing organizing work, community work from our subordinated and marginalized places. We're often doing that out of survival. And that to me is a different kind of advocacy or accomplice work. If we're talking about allieness, what I think trying to survive isn't being your own ally. It's trying to pay rent or keep a job or get food or something. It's very different standards. But if we're doing work from our dominant identities, it costs less, literally, to use the resources we have access to from our privileged or dominant places to be able to advocate for other people. It's also good role modeling, and frankly, it's a better recruitment tool. I can be an angry dyke for sure, even outside of Halloween season. I could pull that off on a daily basis, but it is not a good recruitment tool. But when I show up as a middle-aged, upper-class, highly educated white woman, when I'm in that space, and then from that space talking about anti-racism work, what's happening globally, why we seem to turn to genocide when we don't know what else to do, I can have those conversations with my friendly other little white ladies at brunch, and I'm actually doing better work, even though it costs me less. I came to this conclusion after 20 some odd years of working with different audiences, different organizations, and encouraging them individually to not be an employee at some organization, which is why, like, I don't really know what your job titles are. There's more than one organization on the call. Great. There's a much better chance I'm going to bump into you at a grocery store than there is I'm going to bump into you at work with whatever your job title is. And the skills that we often learn at work, we kind of clock out of them when we are not at work anymore. And I really want us to realize that you have all of the skills you need to have really hard conversations. So how do we get responsible for when we choose not to use them? So that's really what I want to spend today talking about. Is I call them conversations that matter. And spoiler alert, they're not conversations with other people. They're conversations with you, which is usually your most negative audience. And so just take a second, and I want you to think, like, we'll pick the number 7. Put a 7 in the chat box, unless you're driving, and then don't do it. But put a 7 in the chat box if you have ever had a hard conversation. Really hard. Don't really know how this is going to turn out, but it's important to do it, right? So most of you, ooh, some exclamation points. Most of you are familiar with having a hard conversation. Okay. Now put an 8 if one of those hard conversations, maybe even that you've had within the last month, went AWOL. Like it went some direction where you didn't know where it's going. You don't know how you're going to get out of this. You don't know where it's going to resolve, but you care enough about the topic or the person that you hung in there, right? Like that is a hard conversation. And now you're all on thin ice with each other. Let's see where it goes. So that seems to be the vast majority of people on the call. Good. Welcome to like living and being a human being. But here's the catch. Is there, put a 1 in the chat, is there a topic that you're like, deuces, I'm out. I don't want to talk about this topic. I don't know how to talk about this topic. This topic is too complicated. I don't, sorry. Is that the phone? I gotta go get the phone. That you know you have consciously opted out because a topic came up. Keep the ones coming. Might not be a topic. Maybe it's a person. That person could hand you a bag of $1 million and you're going to be like, I'm sorry. Nope. The Zoom must be going out. Internet's gone. Can't, because you just are not here for that human anymore. Right? Now you have the sack of skills that resulted in all those 7 and 8s, but you have the sack of skills that you take home with you when it's that person or that topic. So what I'm going to invite us to do isn't to learn new skills, but it's to become conscious of when we choose to take an exit ramp. Okay. So what I want us to do as we walk through this flow chart, I'm going to tell you where you are most likely to deuces, I'm out of here. And the reasons why is because it's hard and we don't know how to win, or we don't know how to at least make them lose. We don't know if we're right, and we don't know how to make them know they're wrong. So then we don't even start. Why start if we don't think we can win? And the secret is that some conversations aren't about winning. And you've had them, you put 8s down. You've had hard conversations that wasn't about winning and losing or being right and wrong, but it's because you cared about the person. And that's a really important distinction. And so again, I'm not going to come to you today with any new skills. I don't think. I'm going to come with jokes for show, but I'm not going to come with new skills, because what I want you to do is to pay attention to when are you out of here and using the skills when you are not out of here, right? Like, can we become more conscious of when we make those choices? So after doing a ton of research, I have figured out basically when we have an AWOL conversation or a really hard conversation and we hang in there anyway, this is often what we do. And when we stop before we even start, it's each of these steps and likely reasons that we don't proceed. So the handout, thank you, Tasha, for putting the number again. You can text me, and the handout again is in the chat. I want to start through these, but here's the deal. I want you to think of your topic or your people that you're like a hard pass. Absolutely no. 0, not happening. You don't have to tell anybody who it is. You don't have to put it in the chat. Usually there's one person that's like, I'm not annoyed by anyone. Well, I'm now annoyed by you, so I'll just add you to my list, right? Because you have to be, you're functioning. And if you truly aren't, I don't think you're functioning. And that's like a bigger problem, and probably a copay's involved, right? So if you have at least one topic and at least one kind of person, welcome to the team of humanity. Now let's work with how to get conscious of when we choose not to engage. Their solution here is not your capability of engaging with every topic and every person. The solution is to make a conscious choice that you can't, or that you don't want to. And maybe that's out of self-care. Maybe that's out of utter exhaustion. Maybe that's out of conscious bias. Don't know, don't care, one step at a time. Let's just move from unconscious to conscious. Good? High fives? Okay, let's do it. Oh, y'all actually high-fived me. Thank you so much. My little extrovert self just got very happy. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. Number one, you're going to take said handout. You are not going to hand this handout to somebody else, because that's weird. It is not a good icebreaker. Even if they were on this webinar, nobody's going to be like, thanks, right? So you're just going to kind of like casually memorize this handout. I recommend putting it up by your computer if you need to, keep it in your wallet, whatever you need to do. But what I want you to do is I want you to pick who you are going to practice with. And ideally, as you start, because this is an Olympic skill situation, we are JV T-ball starting out, okay? So I want you to start with someone you are likely to never see again, because then you have no chance of it being held accountable because you are going to screw this up. And then you're much more likely to engage if you know it's not going to stick. But you're the only one paying attention. You are not promised a conversation partner. If one of your coworkers or your work spouse is on this call, they're just going to tell you you're doing a great job. So it's like the wrong practice partner. Okay. So I want you to think about like your next Uber driver. Or the example I like to use because I'm addicted now to eggnog chais is a barista. Preferably a barista you're less likely to see again. Okay, so think of like an airport barista who's like, yeah, E7's to the left, right? Like that kind of situation. This is not a high stakes relationship. You have kind of a closed window of time you're engaging. What you're going to start off with, number one, step one, you are not going to try and win. You are not going to make them lose. You are absolutely not about being right or wronging them. What you're going to do is you're going to start off with the idea of making a better connection with this human being. Like when I say better connection, I mean kind of like elevating all of humanity through this engagement. Now, I have already lost at least a third of you because you're like, not today. It is a Wednesday. I am out. I'm not elevating nothing except maybe my feet. No, we're not doing this. Okay. But at least you're like conscious that you have decided you are not doing it. Okay. So like golf clap to you. We're going to proceed down the flow chart on the off chance you ever make it to step 2. But I do want you to notice that you are a hard no at elevating humanity. Have you looked around? I guarantee you there are people having a significantly harder day than you. But that doesn't necessarily mean you want to elevate humanity. It's a lift, pun intended. But we're just going to practice, hypothetically, ideally with someone you're never going to see again. So can we kind of collectively agree this low stakes might be an okay hypothetical starting point that comes with the blue-haired lady's handout? Okay, can we do this? Okay, step 2. If you decide to get in the saddle on step 1, you're going to love step 2. Step 2 is when the hell do I get to get out of this saddle? Right? So I want you to figure out what's your intentional conversation framework. So do any of you have personal trainers? Bless you. Okay. So here's why I think personal training sessions work is that generally speaking, a personal training session, you know when it's supposed to end, right? So when Zack Attack says, give me 10 more, you look at the clock and slow that shit down and like time's up, Zack Attack, right? Like, you know, when you get to stop doing the thing, that's really critical for starting a thing that you don't want to do is when do you get to stop? So step 2 is this is going to be some kind of intentional conversation situation. So when is it over? When do I have to stop elevating humanity and get to go back to my TikTok trends? When do I get to do this? When is it done? So let's take a barista. If you're standing in line, you are like psyching yourself up to elevate humanity with this barista person. So then you get to stop elevating humanity when the cup is in your hand. So you are in it to win it, whole flow chart. Let's see how far you can get. But what if the barista's fast? Well, then you only got to practice what you got to practice because you can commit and promise once there is a beverage in your hand, you can go back to being a jerk. Deal? This is a very motivating part. Do not skip number 2. So step 1, we're going to elevate humanity until I have a drink in my hand with said barista. Now, I don't know if you have met any baristas lately. I live in a very rural area in super Northern California. So when like Lavender decides to take my order, which could be in between filing your nails or putting your fake eyelashes on or something. Who knows? My time is limited with lavender, but I have to practice this flow chart. And until the drink gets in my hand, that's the time and zone that I'm practicing. I say that because I'm not entitled to a partner, and lavender is not accepting handouts. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm practicing for the benefit of me. I just need the kind of social situation to be able to do it. So let's say you've decided you're going to do it. You've decided when you're going to stop doing it. Notice you haven't said anything yet. Step 3 is you're going to listen to them as if they are wise. Now, if I haven't lost you yet, I have lost you now. Because the second I said that, you thought of your coworker or a family member or a friend that you're like, they're dumb as shit. That is not, I can't, how am I supposed to, they like useless, waste of carbon. I can't listen to them as if they're wise. Why? Why would I? No, this makes absolutely no sense. Hard pass, can't do it. Okay, so let's digress for just a second. Number 1, notice how hard pass you are because of that one person. If that one person happens to be Lavender the barista, pick a different coffee shop. But you probably don't have a lavender at your, well, you probably do have a lavender at your barista, but it's not necessarily the person that you're at a hard pass with. So I don't think you understand that we unconsciously opt out of really meaningful conversations because somebody else is a jerk. That's not this person's fault. It's certainly not your fault either, but it is a handy excuse to have with you. So a lot of times in liberal pinko commie social justice land, we say we have to give each other grace. Have y'all heard this? I'm also Southern, so maybe it's a Southern thing. We have to give each other grace. I don't know who Grace is, but she does not get around, right? So like, I don't know what's going on there. But when we say that, what does it mean to do that? To do that, to give someone grace, means, you can write this down, and some of you are like, can't do it. Have you met Todd? No. Jeff with a G? No. Right? I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about other people. This is how you give grace. You have to realize their life taught them to show up this way. Even when I say that, like for 5 seconds, you can think about them a little bit differently, right? Their lives taught them to show up this way. Now, the advanced class, spoiler alert, is that your life taught you to show up this way. And it could be wrong, right? But ultimately, grace is kind of a different workshop. But when we're listening to other people as if they're wise, the root of it is about giving grace. Is the person in a good mood? Is the person in a bad mood? Are they just taking your order? Or are they being more conversational? Every single person on this call has covered or shifted or hidden something that's going on in their real life, your real life, because you're at work. You don't know what's going on in other people's lives. We think we do, but we don't. So can we listen when we're practicing this? Can we listen to other people as if they know something that's going on in their real life that you don't know? Some people, it's still too hard to do it. So then I will employ what I call the frittata. Are you familiar with frittatas? I'm pretty sure that you didn't think the word frittata was going to come up on your keynote bingo card, but that's your fault. I do not know how to cook. Shocking. So when during COVID, I was in charge of all the food I was supposed to eat, and I'm an emotional eater. That was a vortex that was not good for me, but I do not do dishes. So therefore I'm in charge of cooking. I found out that frittatas are shockingly easy to make because you put leftover whatever, and then you cover it up with eggs, cheese, and butter, and it generally turns out fine. Who knew? Man, and it's a fancy word, right? Like we're having frittata for dinner tonight. So there is a very good chance that this asshat that you're about to engage with knows a frittata recipe that you don't know. Just is like enough curiosity to be able to listen to them as if they know something, because they could know a frittata recipe that you don't know. Most of the time, diversity related programs like this, or even if y'all text me questions, it's going to be like, yeah, but have you met Barb in accounting? Like, you can't listen to her. Like she's not going to tell you nothing. Then don't practice with Barb. That's your responsibility. That's not Barb's responsibility. Notice how you're showing up. Totally not curious at all about what's going on in Barb's world. You can control yourself. You can't fix Barb. Otherwise, you would have already because she's already annoying. Following? Okay. So if I haven't lost at least 2/3 of you now, because listening to other people is a hard pass if you're elevating humanity to begin with. So you're doing that, you know when to stop, and now you're going to listen to them. Luckily, we all make judgments and assumptions. So that's basically what I'm asking you to do. Is I want you to think about the scenario, pay attention to what's going on, listen to them. Extroverts, we usually do this through like dolphins, sonic, like sonar, right? Like we send little messages out, see, and then we make judgments and assumptions about the results. And of course, we assume we are accurate. Judgments and assumptions make us feel safe and prepared. They might not be accurate. So, leaving room to become more accurate would be wonderful. And that's an honors program workshop. That's not this one. So I just want you to listen as if they know something. Notice, extroverts, we have not spoken yet. We haven't really delivered a message. And the goal is not to win or be right. It's to elevate humanity. So if you get this far, we are now at the place where we're going to figure out what are we trying to communicate. Now, Lavender is going to want our order. So you might want to pay attention to the order of the order, right? Have you ever gone to like a fast food thing and you're talking to the squawky box and you place your order out loud and then they ask you questions of everything you just said, but in the different order? Because that's the only way they know how to put it into the cash register. I remember the first time I went to a drive-through during COVID times, I of course went to Wendy's because I have excellent taste. And I was so excited about eating food that I didn't cook that I basically did a TED talk to the squawky box. I'm also not married to the person on the other side of the squawky box, to my knowledge, which was also very novel after being trapped in a house with a philosopher and 3 rescue dogs. So I went on and on and on and on about how excited I was about this hamburger, and more specifically, how many extra pickles I mean when I say extra pickles, because I am stoked about the extra pickles. Finished my TED talk. Squawky box immediately asks, do I want pickles? Yes, I do. Thank you for people used to pay me for stories. Thank you. I gave you the whole pickle story for free. Didn't even listen, but it was in the wrong order. So now what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to form your message and I want you to be crystal clear on your intended meaning of what it is you're trying to say. So I don't know if there's any other cranky, sarcastic Gen Xers, but I'm about to say something very triggering. So I would like to give you a trigger warning. But I'm going to invoke the Little Debbie Swiss roll. Are y'all familiar with these things? Those of you that are not familiar, I refer to it as an obesity starter kit. But as a latchkey kid, this was like my after school snack. So let me invoke the image in case it's needed. First off, there is cake. Those of you not watching or multitasking, I'm using air quotes, so don't sue me because that is not actual cake. But cake-like substance is rolled out, smeared with some kind of expired caulking, rolled together and dipped in 100% not chocolate, which is why you have to eat them frozen. And that is a Little Debbie Swiss roll. Now, the reason why I have to give you, they are tasty, it's true. The reason why I have to give you the image of a Swiss roll is that you can't, highly do not recommend separating the ingredients of a Swiss roll. You really don't want to know what the cake looks like without the caulking. And you have a hard time admitting that you are eating caulking and that is still not chocolate on the outside. So when you freeze it, it's much easier to eat and you just kind of take it all in all at once. But that's what I want you to think about when you are forming your message while also being super clear on what your intended meaning is. We can get all wrapped around the axle of what our intentions are or how to say our intentions. Nobody cares. It's inside your own head. Just do both well. Keep them together. But here's the kicker. I want you to be 100% responsible for whatever it is you're about to say. Remember, the goal is to elevate humanity, not to win or be right. Remember? See above. Some of you are like, exiting. Okay, but now you at least know you're not interested. Some of you have a marriage therapist. And so you're like, I don't know about 100%. We're really only 50%, right? That's how marriage counselors have job security, is they tell you you're 50% responsible. We're trying to elevate all of humanity here. So I'm going to ask you to Swiss roll until you are 100% responsible. Do not say the thing unless you're 100% responsible for it. It's a hard practice. But what ends up happening is when you're 100% responsible, you don't become defensive if it doesn't work out, because you're crystal clear on what it is you meant to say, and you're crystal clear on how you chose to say what you meant to say. That doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean it's not offensive. And it doesn't mean you're even going to get feedback. But it means you know what it is you're trying to say, and you made a conscious choice of how to say it. So then if you're gifted with feedback, you can take it that way and say thank you instead of getting defensive. Now, how you know that you are not doing this? Let me explain this, because some of you are like, I do this all the time. No, you don't. So number one is the turkey. Number two is the transcriber, or like the court reporter. So if you've ever said anything and somebody comes back to you with a something and you make a sound that sounds like a drunk turkey, it sounds something like, if you know that you did whatever you just got told you meant, but you don't know what you actually meant. And sometimes we didn't even know that was an option, but that is not what I meant. But I wasn't crystal clear on what I meant, which is why I sound like a turkey. If somebody comes at you and you were crystal clear on what you meant, then you can say, interesting. I didn't know that. Quick example. My uncle and I have become very close since COVID because we talk on the phone every week. My uncle just turned 70 something, and he is an active country dancer at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, Texas. I have been twice, and I bring a clipboard and keep a little dance card for him. He's very popular. So there's another guy who comes to dance. He's a young gun. His name's Kyle. He's good looking, supermodel, great dancer. And my uncle enjoys knowing that Kyle exists. My uncle leaves before what he calls the witching hour, which is when the half naked drunk people show up. He's there early to dance, then he leaves. But Kyle shows up close to the witching hour. So one day my uncle tells me that he's dancing with different women, and he's just dancing. He is not doing anything else, and he is very conscious that he is just dancing. So he tells some of the women that he's dancing with that you should dance with Kyle. He'll be in later, and he's a total player. Now, some of y'all's eyes just bugged out of your head, but evidently, according to my uncle, in 1940s or something, player meant that you're not like stuck to one person. I think we would now call this polyamorous or something. And he's a non-monogamous dancer is what he was trying to say, but has old, outdated vocabulary. He does not know that the word player is not a positive thing now, right? So Kyle eventually approaches my uncle and is like, did you call me a whore? This is Billy Bob's drama, right? So my uncle is just kind of like, what are you talking about? Because he didn't know what the word means now, right? Spoiler alert, this did not go well. Kyle and my uncle do not talk to each other anymore. And Kyle is not a player. He's a good dancer who doesn't have a girlfriend. Anyway, I'm a professional mediator. I could not help. The reason why I'm bringing it up as an example is that language is constantly changing. And if you know what it is that you meant to say, then you're available to find out that there are new meanings or new definitions of other words. There's also historical definitions that you might need to know. Do you live under a rock? And there are people who do not live under a rock who just didn't know. So it's your responsibility to be 100% responsible for what it is you're trying to say and the choices you make and how to say it. That is actually a pretty easy thing. But now take a second, and I want you to actually think about how many texts, phone calls, emails, conversations, replies have you said something where you weren't even conscious your face was moving. You don't know what you're saying. There might vaguely know that there is a noise coming out of your skull or words coming out of your fingertips. We often communicate as a transactional situation and not because it actually is meaning. But this particular moment, we're not talking about normal conversation gone wrong. We're talking about an intentional conversation we're having with Lavender before the coffee cup gets in our hands. Do you see the difference? If we can be 100% responsible for what we do, we're going to be far less defensive. We might not be able to actually make it out without sounding like a drunk turkey. Now, before I move on, the court reporter, these are conversations you know that didn't go well from your past, and you have downloaded the transcript. Their lines stay the same, but you replay or redo the conversation over and over again so that you can eviscerate them better. That is not what we are talking about here. That's usually a conversation you don't feel like you won. And so for me, it shows up between the first and the second conditioning cycle, and I want to win. That is not elevating humanity. That's a different kind of conversation. Are we good? If any of you have taken the exit ramp, welcome to humanity, but we're going to keep going and pretend that you haven't. Okay? So to review, you have decided you're going to elevate humanity via Lavender, the barista who does not know you are doing this. You are going to stop doing this as soon as there is a drink in your hand. You are going to quote unquote listen to Lavender and find out good mood, bad mood. It's also a good way to find out like names, pronouns, attitude, sass, level of slang. Can you cuss? Can you not cuss? Formality, casual. You're listening for things, right? Then you're going to decide what it is you're going to try and say and what is it you mean by what it is you're trying to say. You're going to do that until you're 100% responsible for it. And only then are you going to release the Kraken out into the world. That is when you're going to say the thing, text the thing, email the thing, whatever. That is when you're going to put it out there. It's because you're 100% responsible. So regardless of what happens or what comes back to you, which could also be nothing, that's when you're actually going to take responsibility for the impact of what it is that you've said. Now, because this is the LGBT and ally employee resource group folks, or people who just didn't have anything to do on Wednesday, I want you to think about, there are times people have said things to you that had an impact on you. Could be positive, probably negative is what you're thinking of. And we don't always have the opportunity or the gumption or the ability, spoons, self-care, whatever we want to call it, to explain to somebody their negative impact. But imagine if we experience a negative impact around our subordinated or marginalized identities that we share in common, or others that we don't necessarily share in common with other people on this call, and they actually respond to the impact on us in a way where they take full responsibility for it. Can you imagine what that would actually feel like? To not be shoved off to the side, not dismissed, not like, yeah, that's just your weird thing, but like full responsibility, impact accepted. The challenge is that instead of waiting for that to happen, there's a very good chance you are having an impact on someone else that you may or may not even know about. And so can we role model what it looks like to claim, or sometimes it's the same person again, reclaim the responsibility for the impact of something that we have said or done? Can we do that every once in a while, occasionally? I say yes. And then that in itself will role model for other people how to do it. So instead of trying to fix Todd and Barb and Jeff with a G, if we do it, maybe they will also potentially do it. That's like the big prize. But ultimately, the big prize is elevating humanity. That's pretty damn good. Okay, let's say we've done it. We accept the responsibility. Now is when we can actually be reflective and kind of close out the loop. And we can have a conversation, again, with judgments and assumptions about how did this conversation go? What was the meaning of this interaction? What's the impact on the relationship I've had with this person? Right? Is it positive? Is it better? Is it neutral? Is it worse? We might not be right, but the practice of like actually reflecting on our impact is something that we can work on, right? That's a tool we have and we use it. Remember all those 7s and 8s? We use it all the time until we choose not to. And then what I want us to do is to slow down enough to figure out when are we choosing not to. Make sense? So if that's the overview of the flow chart, I want to give the texting number again, just in case, because I haven't gotten a single text yet, but you're too busy laughing at my funny jokes. But the texting number is 202-670-4 4262. And you can text anything you want. And I'll tell you that the first 3 or 4 texts that I probably get are either going to say thank you, they're going to be tests, or they're going to be a question about a Todd, a Barbara, and a Jeff, and be the equivalent of a yeah, but how do we do this, or how do we make other people do this? I have no idea. If I knew how to make other people do something, I would have done it by now. But let's be honest, I don't even know how to make my own self do stuff, right? Again, back to working out. I was raised by professional athletes. I understand how caloric math works. I also know that if I ever actually put on a sports bra, I have already done my cardio for the week. This is not motivating for me at all. I intellectually understand, but I don't do it. And becoming conscious of what I'm unconscious of is my responsibility. So at what stage do we lose our own way? That's the work that we need to be doing. So again, the texting number is 202-670-4262. So before I give you an example of the flow chart in my world, I want to open it up and see if there's any questions. You can put them in the chat. You can text me. You can unmute and say them out loud, whatever you like. Let me check in and see how we're doing. That speaker code for let me get some water. No text yet. How are we doing out there?
While we're waiting, Jess, do you want us to spotlight you or just leave it as is?
It's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
I mean, the funny thing about the spotlighting and all of that stuff, now we're having a Zoom conversation, is that especially when I work with other speakers, or I like am the DJ of the Zoom meeting, is that no matter what we do, it is completely dependent on each user's device and experience and what they have set up. So I don't hurt me at all. But thank you for asking. Any out loud questions? I'm not seeing any out loud questions. No texting questions. Oh, wait, I spoke too soon. Texting question. Are you ready? How does this conversation sound when someone gets pronouns wrong? Well, so again, this question notice is worded about when somebody else is doing something wrong, right? So people are going to get pronouns wrong all the time because that happens. What is fascinating is the only people who experience their pronouns being done wrong are usually the ones that need them done right the best, because that's how like gender is perceived, right? So the people who are attempting to be inclusive and do things, we get to say things to them about like, is this hard? You have to practice, which seems insane, but it is actually hard to perceive and validate someone outside of your own perception. And that's what I'm asking you to do. People rather do like push-ups than do that, because they have to first admit that they're not perceiving things accurately, and that validating someone's existence has nothing to do with their perception. Now we're getting into ego work, right? So if I can flip the conversation a little bit, is that when you have been misgendered, or people are using pronouns inaccurately for you, you know what that feels like. So can you use that and flip it around to when you're trying to have one of these conversations and try to figure out when you're not able to validate somebody else because of your own perception, because you now know what that feels like. Like, you know what it feels like to be marginalized or forgotten, or someone, it looks like someone's not even taking the effort to validate you. That's really awful and terrible and horrible. And we do that to a lot of other people. How do we do this to the person who's doing it to us? That's doing this work from our marginalized and subordinated places, out of survival, and not out of like elevating humanity, community development kind of stuff, right? So they're kind of separate pieces. The only way that I can figure out how to possibly do this in a sane way is to the idea of giving grace, right? And that whatever pronoun someone is using is what they perceive you to be, and how social norms and gender performance and all of that stuff actually shows up in our daily lives is real. And you know that, and you've asked them, or you assume that they should know this because you assume that they have been told the information and they have to prioritize it to remember. And their life taught them not to do that. Or their life taught them that that isn't a thing. And you are now part of their life. So then you are something that they're getting to learn from, which is awful and gross and heavy. And like, that is not something you signed up for. But that's the empathy place of like their life taught them that this is how things work and they have to catch up. And some people have no interest in catching up. So for your own mental health, I would say like support and pay attention to the people who are supporting and trying, and their life has taught them how to show up better with you, and you'll be surrounded by more supportive people. Right? That's a really hard thing to say to people because you want to fix the broken folks. But broken folks, sometimes that's what their life taught them to do. That's how it's like people who only understand attention as bad attention. It's hard to give people who are used to bad attention good attention because they don't know how to accept it because their life taught them to be this way. So flip around and focus on the people whose life taught them to be in a way that's far more empowering for you. That's how I would answer that question. It probably didn't make people happy, but that's where I'm at. All right, there's a question in the chat. How do you regulate your emotions? Wrong person, don't know. I'm a mess. But let me keep reading just in case somebody else has ideas. Okay, how do you regulate your emotions when you talk to Barb or someone who misgenders you so that your message remains clear? Great. So similar question to the first one. So I identify as a cis person and I use feminine pronouns. So for me, because my pronouns are often how people perceive me, especially the older and rounder I get, people generally assume I'm some like old fat white woman now. There was a period of time where like my fierce dyke days, and like depending on power dynamics, sometimes people would call me sir, but only if they had permission. That's very different, right? Similarly, if the line's long, I'll go to the bathroom in the men's bathroom because I gotta go. There are other times I have walked into the men's bathroom and I have been like, oh shit, I'm in the wrong place. So I have the self-autonomy to police myself. And both of these questions are about pushing back to other people who are not acknowledging your existence in the way you want to be acknowledged. That is real. And I would also encourage you to recognize that, as hard as this is to say, no one is actually entitled to every other human being in the entire world acknowledging your existence. It's a hard thing to swallow. It'd certainly be really nice. But especially in the workplace, I have to have conversations with people all the time that like capitalism is not on your side, right? Like it's kind of a different workshop, but let's really think about it. At the center of Christianity, white supremacy, and capitalism is everything. And so inside those three things, how do you get to do this? You might not be able to with that person. So then I would say more about, instead of fixing Barb, is how do you fix and prepare yourself for Barbs so that it's not personally injuring, because there are more Barbs than there are non-Barbs. And if you can do that, then you can really celebrate the non-Barbs. And by celebrating the non-Barbs, you're healthy and happy and taken care of. And then someday, somewhere, Barb is actually going to like see the light of day, and you might benefit from that. I had a call the other day. I am totally not going to cry during this because I will not cry. I refuse. But I had a call the other day with a friend of mine who's a speaker, and their eldest kid is, our youngest kid, I'm sorry, has started to transition. And for the last 6 years, they have not done anything. My friend is the wife and the couple. They have not done anything with the husband's family because the husband doesn't know how to tell his extended family that his youngest child is transitioning. So they have done nothing with this. And it's been really, really hard for people. And the other day, the husband finally told his dad that his youngest kid is transitioning and is now going by Eric. And these are Eric's pronouns. And grandpa, who is like 88, because we always apply ageism to not being inclusive, which is us being ageist. Grandpa said, first off, thank you for finally telling me. We miss y'all. And number 2, will you please tell Eric I have put it on a Post-it note next to my computer and I will do my best, and I love Eric no matter what. And I like burst into tears on my couch because there are so many more people in my life who do not have supportive parents that I forget there are people who have supportive parents. And I don't want to live in a life where I'm constantly shocked by love and care and that I have become calloused and numb to like hate and ignorance. Right? So that's a lot about me and what I'm focusing on too. And because of my work, maybe I focus more on the ignorance and places and growth spurts and like things that we need to be learning about. But there are people who love you too. Right? So don't let Barb steal your joy because somebody else loves you and is waiting for your attention, which interestingly is about being validated, even though you're not perceiving them. That's where we can flip it around a little bit. Okay, I don't mean to make you cry, and I made it through without crying. Good job. Okay. Somebody has to jump. Thank you for this. I love your delivery. Okay, great. Compliments. Okay. It's the bright spots like that that gives me the most hope. Forgive that. Oh no, that's fine. Who needs grammar? It's a virtual talk. Okay, let me see if there's more textings. No textings, I think. Okay. So we're at the top of the hour. Some of you are going to have to jump, but you can watch the recording or fast forward to the last 30 minutes. So what I want to do is I want to give you an example of me working through the flow chart. And I want you to like think about and kind of identify when I'm on which step / I will also point it out. Okay. In order to do the example, you need to know one very weird thing about me, and that is I have a thing for flamingos. There's always a Virgo in the room who's going to get super hung up on like, what is it about Virgos? Or, well, what is it about Virgos? That's also a different workshop. But I have a thing for flamingos. I am also a triple Virgo. So I get it. Okay. But just can we accept I have a thing for flamingos? Can we move on? Is that good? I have a therapist. I'm good. I have good insurance. We're under control over here. Okay. Thing for flamingos. So my friend Sylvie and I, we do this thing where we text message each other flamingos that naturally occur. Oh my gosh, Nadine, I just noticed there's something pink above your head. Is that a flamingo or is that a pink tree? Pause. No one else pay it. We'll be back in just a second. It's a pink tree, isn't it? But it really wants to be a flamingo. We're going to pretend it's a flamingo. Are you going to say something? The pink tree?
It's a tree.
For now on, you're always going to look at it and be like, that blue-haired lady said it's a flamingo tree. Who knew flamingos grew on trees? Here we are. Okay. Thank you, Tasha. Okay. So focus. Now I'm all distracted by Nadine's flamingo tree. Okay. So Sylvie and I text message flamingos that we see in the world. We both travel for a living. Generally, this is like socks or something dangling off somebody's purse in my life. She lives in Tampa, so sometimes it's literally flamingos. There's a big flamingo in the airport there. Whatever. This is what we do. One day, I am cruising through O'Hare. Somebody sends me my favorite flamingo gift for baby flamingos hatching out of the eggs and their little fuzzy brown little guys. Little so cute. Anyway, so I fat thumb copy it and immediately send it to Sylvie because triple Virgo, I do everything with great urgency. How you do one thing is how you do everything. It's on my Tinder profile. Anyway, so I send this thing out. I get a text back from Sylvia that says, I think you have the wrong number. My immediate response is, who the hell is Sylvia? Okay. Then I slow my roll enough and I realize it's my phone. So I'm supposed to know who Sylvia is. Okay. Then I also backstep and be like, thank goodness it was just a gif of flamingos, if you know what I mean. Wrong number. Okay. Then I remember, this is the emotional roller coaster part. My aunt Sylvia, I must still have her number in my phone. She died in a house fire like over a decade ago. Didn't even remember that I still had her phone number in my phone, and my fat thumbs while I was running through O'Hare, I obviously texted it to the wrong person. They have my aunt's recycled number. Sherlock Holmes, mystery solved, figured it out. Then I realized I haven't thought about my aunt in like forever. And I'm immediately awash with like joy that I haven't experienced in a really long time. Because I love my aunt. She's my favorite relative. She is single-handedly responsible for this being alive and myself. And I'm so happy I decide that this person who has my aunt's recycled phone number deserves this joy. Remember what I said about judgments and assumptions? Don't mean you're right, but here we are. So some people will say this is like a low stakes example, but I'm just using it as an example of working through the flow chart. So I decide I want to share joy. So I'm going to elevate humanity through this better connection, right? Do you see step one? This is what I'm going to do. My motivation is not to be right or to be wrong or to make, no, my motivation is like sheer joy to sheer joy. Intentional conversation. What's my limitation? When do I get to stop doing this? I obviously have the person's phone number, so I could call them or FaceTime them, but I'm not a heathen. So I limit myself to a text bubble. Now, a little PSA, some of y'all are texting wrong. You start as a Word doc, and then you put that all into one text bubble, and I can't possibly react to every single idea in the same TED Talk bubble that you did. So this is one idea, one text bubble. I should also mention some of you audio text. You know what I'm talking about? We are so close to voicemail again. I cannot wait. We're coming. It's coming back. I can't wait. So anyway, intentional conversation. One texting bubble. That is what I'm going to do. I'm not calling the person. I'm sending them one single text message. Do they want it? I want to do this, and I have written a story that of course they do. Who doesn't want more joy, right? Judgments and assumptions make you feel safe and prepared. Don't mean you're right. Okay, so now I have to listen to them. Some smart ass is like, how do you listen to a text message? It is grammatically correct. It is not all caps. There are no skull and crossbone emojis. Obviously, this person cannot wait to hear from me. That is often how stupid our judgments and assumptions are, but here we go. So I've limited myself. I've listened to them. I've decided they can't wait. I am now in the Swiss roll territory. So I have to figure out what do I want to say and how do I want to say it inside the limitations with the intention of sharing joy that, of course, I have assumed they can't wait to receive. Are you clear? So I have to work on the Swiss roll until I'm 100% responsible for it. So I write some kind of TED Talk thing. That's too long. Edit it down. And somehow or another, I arrive at, you have my aunt's recycled number. I haven't thought about her in a while because I thought like the whole house fire thing might be kind of a downer in the middle of joy. So we just left that part out. You have my aunt's old number. I haven't thought about her in a while, and it made me really happy. And I just wanted to say thank you. And then like 20 flamingo emojis. I decided that might be too many. So I took like 8 off, right? So like a dozen, baker's dozen, let's do 13. Baker's dozen flamingo emojis, 1 or 2 sentences. Do I feel good about this? Am I 100% responsible for this? I might not hear anything back. I might get a stop blowing up my phone. I could be blocked. I don't know. Someone could knock on my door. Technology these days, who knows, right? Like, am I comfortable? I got to a point where, yes, I am 100% responsible for whatever's about to happen. So then I send the text out into the ethers. Now, some of you have the Hallmark channel, and so you are imagining me and someone else making flamingo maple syrup together, and that did not happen. So manage your expectations. However, the person did respond, which I'm not guaranteed, but they did respond. And how they responded was, I never met Sylvia. I obviously have her number, and this happens more often than you would expect. Sylvia made such a positive impression on people or impact on people that they still have her number. And every time I get a wrong number, I hope it is a reminder. And then I message all of the women in my life and tell them how important they are to me, because I know you can't do that anymore. Right? Like, I am a keynote speaker. I couldn't ask for a better closing speak. This is amazing. Hold on, I have to write all this down. The point, though, is that I'm not guaranteed a response, but I did get one. And then when I make meaning of what this is, I'm better for it, right? I can still tell this story years later, and y'all are still better for it because it feels good. And ultimately, that's what being 100% responsible feels like to other people. So I haven't deleted the number. I have not heard back from the person. I grabbed my coffee from Lavender at the barista. Remember her, right? I grabbed my beverage. I feel better about this exchange. If I feel better, I'm more likely to do it again. At the heart of it, we are all a little narcissistic. So what can we do as a party of one to keep us doing conversations that matter, to keep us making better connections, to keep us doing ally work, even better from our places of dominance? That is actually how we're going to dismantle the systems of oppression that making this ERG need to be in place in the first place. If we can do that, we can show other people they can do it too. And we'll do it in a way that's not full of exhaustion and need for self-care, but from actually bettering and elevating all of humanity, of which we belong to. I didn't say this at the beginning, but all the research that I've done resulted in a mantra. And my mantra is to do the best you can with what you've got some of the time. I would like to point out that that is an outrageously low bar. Do the best you can with what you've got some of the time. Some of you are like, hard pass. Okay, but please notice you have to lift your foot to get over that bar. Do the best you can with what you got some of the time. If you can do that every once in a while, imagine the impact you'll have on Barb. And that is what good enough now actually means. So please share flamingo emojis with me because it makes me happy. But I want to open it up again and see if there's any other thoughts or comments or ideas, preferably not about Barb, Todd, or Jeff, because they've already taken up entirely too much space in our lives. I'm more interested in you and how you are doing. So hit me. How's it going out there? I should say again, just in case, the texting number is 202-670-4262. Thank you, Dan, for the flamingo. I think there's about 20 of us still on the call, so you can also unmute and we can just have a conversation like actual people if you like.
This is Chelsea. I love this. I've been literally smiling the whole time, so I appreciate it. And what I love the most of what you've said so far is like operating from like your place of privilege, I think is like what you're calling it. And to be like really honest and vulnerable. So I'm the chair of the ERG. I'm married to my wife. I have 3 kids. And so, yes, I identify in this community, but I feel like I have a lot of privilege in just a lot of things, like a lot of things. So there was some hesitancy of like even taking this on. But I think that like kind of like stepping into this power and like what I can learn and what I can give to this community is like so much more, it's bigger than what I even imagined. So I think like you just like validating that like it is great. And just I want everyone to like come from a place of power, like even or privilege or power, however you're saying, like what makes them feel confident. And I hope that people are hearing that and like that they're stepping into that too, because there's so much value on this call. So I just really appreciate that. And that's just me being vulnerable. Like I feel like I'm out of place sometimes, even being in this community. And I think just like leading from that place of like what can I give is really important.
100%. I think I think about my like white lady brunches, right?
Yeah.
So we've created a safe space where my little white ladies, we all feel like this is old news. I don't have any friends now because I'm old, right? But like back in the day, I had white lady brunches and we'd go together and we'd like, exchange dog sitter numbers or whatever the hell we would do. But while we felt safe together at brunch, if we're in a safe space, why are we not having raucously challenging conversations inside of those safe spaces? That's what a safe space is for, right? We use that. I mean, it sells a lot of t-shirts, but if you are not disrupting inside of your safe space, all you are doing is supporting Oriental Trading Company, right? Like figure out how to really have challenging conversations inside those safe spaces. I get challenged all the time, Chelsea, as a white person doing diversity work because I'm quote unquote stealing people of color's job. Well, first off, not all people of color want to or can do diversity training, and I can't do shit else. So like I'm stuck here. But I also think that me doing this work from my places of dominance, not as an angry lesbian, but as a white woman, is actually role modeling for other people that this is ongoing work that we need to do. If we slap the word belonging on it, what belonging really means is we don't get to vote anybody off the island if we're going to do belonging. Because we don't mean belonging for some people. Belonging would mean all people that are actually like held accountable to a collective sense of responsibility and community. And there's some people we are at a hard pass at, like, nope, they can't come. So even if we talk, like if I'm working with a more like progressive group on, you know, eradicating the industrial prison complex, great. Where are we going to put the people inside the prison? Oh, no. Then we start having a conversation about like recidivism and like how many innocent people are behind bars. That's totally fine. I am happy. I'm talking about the actual like socially unacceptable wackadoodles that are in prison because that is currently the appropriate place for them to be because we do not know how to hold them in our own communities. A sense of belonging would mean we'd find a place for them, right? It's not selective belonging. Just like coexistence is not a goal, it's already occurring. We have to kind of catch up to that. And Chelsea, I appreciate you sharing the vulnerability of like, I don't know what I should be doing here, or maybe somebody else should be doing this. And that's by design, because then very few people will step up and do it. Thank you for stepping up and doing it. Right? That's important. Other thoughts or comments? There's one in here that was from Jessica. When someone starts a conversation with you and you recognize that you want it to be a meaningful conversation and follow the framework, but you don't quite have your message formed where you can take responsibility 100%, do you just keep the conversation going or ask to come back to it? Great question. And I would say it depends. There are a lot of really hard conversations where I think it's really important to say, you know what? I need a timeout. I need to think. You've like, here's how you get a timeout. Ready? You have said a lot of things that have been very thought-provoking, and I need some time to like synthesize what you said. Can we revisit this? And then the key is revisit it. Don't let it just dangle there forever, because the other person might actually notice that you're just letting it dangling and they're waiting. But like if Brooke and I are chatting it up and I'm in a place where I don't feel 100% responsible for what I'm about to say, I'm not going to just say it to keep the conversation going. And I'm not also going to like sparkly chicken it and pretend that we didn't just get to some contentious place, but now I want to talk about the movie I saw, right? That's irresponsible too. But maybe I could say like, Brooke, we're at a place in the conversation where I don't know what I think. I need to think about what I'm thinking about and figure out how I want to say it. I would love to stay in conversation with you. Can we revisit this topic later on? I need a minute. There's nothing wrong with that. But we assume that we're going to need to know how to say everything because we assume the other person knows how to say everything. Don't you think the other person is like, oh, thank God, I really needed a break because that we got out on some kind of like pirate plank and I don't know how we got there. Yes. Great. How do you like your eggs? Right? Like you can still be in community with someone else, even if you came up to another place. It's just like having the strength to say you don't know something. You don't know what you don't know. We are generally conscious of some of the things that we know we don't know, but there's a hell of a lot more options of things you don't even know you didn't know because you didn't think about it. And now you know, what color socks am I wearing? None of you know that information. Probably none of you cared about knowing or not knowing that information. And now you are aware you do not know. Can we get comfortable in that space of knowing that you don't know something and that there's even more you don't even know you don't know, then the itchy feeling of like, is she going to tell us what color socks she has? Right? Like, who cares what color socks I have? Okay, there's a text that came in. Oh, but it's getting saved on my phone. Okay, I'm sending this to Sylvia. And maybe it'll accidentally go to Sylvia. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing the story about your friend's son transitioning. Personally, I come from a very religious household and have struggled with my relationship with my parents and went through a lapse of 8 years without talking to my dad and close to 5 without talking to my mom. And you got to do what you got to do, right? Like there are some people that are unhealthy to connect with. There are some people who are unhealthy to connect with that you are still connecting with because you feel obligated to connect with them. And you're taking up the time and space and resources and energy to connect with people you really want to connect with. as a queer person, and maybe this happens in other identity-based groups, but in the queer world I am familiar with, we often use a term of chosen family. There are some people in my chosen family I do not like, but they came with the softball team, so you're like, all right, fine, right? I don't have a lot of like family people that are left, which maybe is a blessing and a curse. At the top of COVID, I mentioned my uncle. At the top of COVID, my uncle called me and asked me if I used the Zoom. I, in fact, do use the Zoom. How can I help you? My uncle has been in the Navy my entire life. He's my mother's brother. So I really have no relationship with him at all because he's spent his entire life on a submarine. But he knew or guessed that I used the Zoom, and his entire social life is like Chamber of Commerce events and Billy Bob's dancing. And because of COVID, he knew that he couldn't go and do those things. He lives by himself. He has cats. He was worried about his mental health. So he asked me if I would talk once a week. I don't know anybody else who would not, who would say no, right? But I'm not gonna lie, those first 6 weeks, awkward as hell. Awkward. Turns out that I was frozen as like a 12-year-old. Spoiler alert, I am almost 50. So there's a couple of things that have happened since before I had braces. And he has been frozen in time as the one like holiday I remember him visiting, which was like in the 80s. So after 6 weeks of super awkward, we worked through all of the things that we needed to work through to kind of defrost each other's memory. And it's now been 4 years, and he is by far my favorite gift of COVID. Favorite gift. That and like socially, everyone seems to wash their hands more often now. That's my other favorite gift. I also am very excited that Cholula seems to come in little to-go packs forever, and my fanny pack is full of hot sauce. Those are my 3 takeaways from COVID. I would never have guessed that Marcus and I would be close family members. That never, ever would have crossed my mind. And I do, and I did, and it's great, right? But can you provide the space, the energy for the people you do want in your life? Or are you letting your life get filled up with people that you're obligated to talk to? Yes, we can get that on a t-shirt. That sounds like an ERG t-shirt if I have ever heard one. Although there's a call for it to be sriracha instead of Cholula. We're going to have to work on that because I do not like sriracha. It's in the fridge. I mean, I'm married, but like Cholula. Thank you. But as long as we can agree it's not Tabasco. Why does anybody want vinegar? Ugh. Okay. We have approached the cap of my knowledge. If there are other thoughts or comments or ideas, number one, you can always text message me. I wasn't kidding. So the number again is 202-670-4262. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to support you as you are also trying to role model kind of how to do this. Oh, Sriracha is getting more votes in the chat. I don't know if it changes the shirt plans at all. Wrong. It's okay. You can't be right about everything. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Whatever I can do to possibly help, I'm here to help. And thank you for forming a group. Thank you for allowing doors of all sides, of all kinds of people to find a place to be safe. Don't waste this safe space and have disruptive conversations inside this safe space. Otherwise, all you're doing is reallocating your company's resources, which may not be a terrible idea either. So thank you very much, y'all.
Go ahead, Tosh.
Oh, you were still on, so I wasn't sure if you still wanted me to say it. Jess, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and speak with us. You were super awesome. We heard so much like cool stuff about you, so I'm glad that we were able to coordinate you coming on. It was like amazing, and you're so funny, and like I took a bunch of notes, so thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much.
And then if we have any members on, I'll send this out too. But our next meeting is December 6th, and it'll just be like an end of the year celebration. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I think that's everything, Chelsea, unless there is something else.
Jess, you want to tell us a little bit about your book? Like, I mean, you got an audience. I mean, tell us.
Actually, my social media team also is asking me to encourage people. What is the language? Follow me on the Instagram. Is that the language? It sounds like a venereal disease to me, but if you would like to follow me down the pharmacy aisle to Instagram, that would be amazing. You can also, what is it called? Link with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, it's a thing. I recently learned my password. That would be great because then we can stay in touch. And I'm trying to do more. Obviously, we have a long way to go, but I try to like publish articles and stuff like that and my monthly newsletter to LinkedIn. And then what's the venereal disease one? IG, that's what it is. That one I'm starting to put more like stories and kind of like quick tips from my book in as well. So the book is called Good Enough Now. Doing the best you can with what you got some of the time. It also has a book club in it. Like there's discussion questions at the back. It's an audiobook. There's an ebook. If you have Libby, the app, you can download the audiobook for free. And people have found it to be pretty helpful as far as like professional development or keeping these conversations going, but also hard conversations. But I wrote it basically because I realized that not everyone has the same circle as I'm learning and growing about how to be responsible for myself. Not everyone has the same circle to hold me accountable. And so I really tried to take time to what are the processes that I would encourage other people do to learn who and how you are. And don't assume that that's bad. It's the best tool you have to work with. Yeah, that might be bad news, but it's the best tool you have to work with. So who and how are you? How did you get this way? What do you want to keep? What maybe is incongruent and what do you want to work on? So it kind of walks through a number of those different activities so that we can be more responsible for who and how we are. So that's good enough now. And if you're interested, I'm almost done, no pun intended, with a new book that is going to be called Almost. And that takes 56 case studies of my DEI consulting clients and their failed attempts at doing DEI work and what they got right and where they almost got it right. See what I did there? And then how they could get it righter. Thank you for following and linking and poking. We don't poke anymore, at least, thank goodness. Okay.
HR says no poking.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Again, happy Wednesday to everyone. Whatever I can do to help, let me know. Call me again. I'm happy to play again.
Thank you, Jess. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well-
have a great rest of your year and happy holidays.
Yeah, thanks. Woo!